right? Like it's being written, like everything that you do is being written, whether it's good or bad. And when you die, and I mean, I know in the Western world, the cremation process is a little bit different, but more or less similar to how it's done in the Middle East as well. In the Middle East, usually they just tie up the body in a white cloth. You embalm the body, you clean the body, make sure that the body's clean. You put sandalwood on the body so it smells really good. But when you put the body into the ground, there's no casket like how it is in the Western world. So it's usually wrapped in a piece of cloth, and then they put the body right into the ground, right? And then everybody basically, there's this huge tray, and everybody just picks up pieces of sand in their hand, put it in the tray, and then they slowly slide the sand into the ground, right, where the body is. And they say when you basically bury the body and there's people around, nothing really happens. But once you start walking away from where the body was cremated, especially after like 40 steps, that's when the angels come down. So they don't come down in presence of human beings. They come down after human beings leave that place, and they're 40 steps away from where the body was buried. And that's when, the process of questioning starts, right? That's when the body, because the body's left by itself and it's in the ground, the angels come and then they start talking to the soul. And that's when they start doing the calculations, the examinations, what you did good, what you did bad. And pretty much at that point of time, depending on where the weight is, it's basically decided that either you're going to go to heaven or hell. But it's just kind of crazy. Like when I was a kid, when I was learning about all of these things, I was like, does that really happen? You're still you're young and you don't really know, you're just hearing this from your teachers, your parents and stuff like that. But it's quite fascinating now that I think about it, that's how that whole entire process goes down.
I guess it's very similar as well to Catholicism, more or less a similar concept.
So similar.
Or Christianity. It's except for Christianity or Catholicism have at the end you just I'm sorry, and then there's okay, cool, you go to heaven. It's not quite on karma, so maybe that's actually a better concept because you actually have to be a nice individual throughout your life. Whereas with Christianity, well, is that true of Christianity?
Isn't it I don't know, I feel like there's different versions of Christianity and Catholicism.
Yeah, I mean, I only know Catholicism because that's what I grew up with, but in Catholicism you can just basically, in the Bible when Jesus is on the cross, there's a thief on the cross beside him, and he's stolen from people in his lives, done many bad things, and he's tonight, I don't know exactly, I'm paraphrasing very badly here, tonight we can be in heaven together, provided you repent and ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
And obviously our boy, as an insurance policy, is yeah, I'm sorry, and then he gets to go to heaven, which kind of bothered me a little bit because it just means you don't have to be a good person at all. And then at the last minute, you're I'm sorry, by the way. And then it's you get shot or something, and now you get to go to heaven.
Yeah, you just have to accept Jesus into your heart at the end. And then
But
everything's
doesn't Catholicism or Christianity have this concept of repenting for your sins?
Yeah, that's at the last minute. Or you can go to confession, go to the church and say to the priest, forgive me for these things.
I think this is you.
Which I guess to an extent is a good thing.
That's you, sorry.
I guess in some level, asking for forgiveness is a good thing. It kind of...
Are they all the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I didn't see that cup before.
Oh, damn.
You can still have your favorite cup.
No.
By all means.
I got the hot pink cup.
It is all
You did have a
predetermined.
green cup, but it's actually current in my hand. There's no protection.
You don't want tea?
Yeah.
She's got tea.
Oh, she's got tea.
Everyone got tea.
But yeah, I like the idea of karma, or things written on your shoulder, whatever. How do they call this? It's karma?
Yeah, it's just your deeds, like what you did.
Yeah,
Every deed you did gets written down, every bad deed. And again, bad deeds are also kind of like bad thoughts. Like if you wish bad for a person, like let's say you say something bad to somebody, just like, oh, you should go die or something like that. Again, that's like a bad intention, right? So, but yeah, I mean, at least I don't know how it works in Christianity, but at least in Islam, when a kid is born, they recite the azan, which is the call for prayer, in the kid's ear. And when when he becomes an adult and he dies, they do the actual prayer. So it's almost like a complete process, which is the call for prayer when the kid is born, and towards the death, it's like completing the prayer, the actual prayer itself. And there's a special prayer for when you die. So it's kind of like a fascinating topic. It's like as soon as the kid's born, like he hears the call of prayer. It's either his father or somebody like his grandfather, uncle, who does that. It's pretty fascinating, the whole entire process. So it's like a complete cycle almost.
I like those. Yeah, I like a lot of the Eastern religions a lot more than some of the more Latin or like Roman-based religions.
What do y'all think about reincarnation?
Like you will be reborn?
Like, so if your consciousness or your soul is separate from your body, just instead of going into some kind of collective consciousness, it's just reborn into some other body. Like you could come back as a bird or as some other person and relive in many lives.
I guess in a way, but maybe not entirely. Like, you, Veronica, are a very specific, like your soul is very specifically put together with like all these like billions of different variables. Mm-hmm. And then when you die, you go back to this collective consciousness, and then some parts of you maybe are mixed in with something else, and you go back somewhere else to be used as a lesson through like a bird or something. But yeah, I do believe it to an extent, but not like, I'm just going to be like conscious here and now I'm conscious in a bird.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm a bird now.
Yeah, I agree with Fergal. I think we're not privileged enough to have that. But I think only one person, which is kind of similar to Christianity, Jesus Christ, he is probably the only person who can be reincarnated before the day of judgment. And apparently he comes to save humanity because we were so fucked at that point that we need some type of direction.
Well, I guess he comes in, he's like, I'm just gonna kill you motherfuckers, and we're gonna start again. Like, whoops, simulation got a bit out of control here. It's gonna flood everything. Noah, you build this huge ass boat, put in all the animals, like everybody get in.
But it's so funny, like Christianity and Islam are actually quite similar to each other. Quite similar.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Judaism as well. I went with a girlfriend to like an Easter mass for the first time in a while, and it's like, Jesus, he's a Jew, and it's like, here's all of his Jewish followers, and it's like, why are you guys worshiping him? Like, it's clearly a Jewish religion, and like Jesus was Jewish, but they just kind of used him, like they just took him for Christianity, but it was like there's no, I don't know, it was just a weird thing where it's like, this is clearly all Jewish related things. Like, why don't you guys have your own guy? Like, why are you using the Jewish dude?
Well, I guess when you go back even far enough, like past like the modern religions we have now, like a lot of religions came from the stars. Like in Christianity, for example, the three kings go to the brightest star in the east. At the birth of Jesus, mm-hmm. And the three kings are Orion's belt, the three stars in a line, and they're always pointing to the brightest star in the east around that time when, because in reality they say that Jesus was actually not born December 25th, but I think slightly later earlier or something like that. So around that time, the three kings and the brightest star in the east are always in perfect alignment. And then there's like, if you look, like Mary is represented by bread, and that is also from another constellation. So a lot of the stories from these religions are just mapped out from even older religions. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, why choose this one? Why not this star religion or another one? But I guess at the end, I mean, a little bit biased, they're all going to talk about the same thing in the end. There's like one maybe universal truth that they're all kind of getting to, but they tell the story in a slightly different way. Mm-hmm. It's not fun when everybody agrees with me.
So then,
did you put honey in here?
No, I didn't do anything. I put the honey there.
Disrespect.
Everyone can add their own honeys.
Mine is now basically liquid honey.
Sounds fantastic.
As it goes.
This is how you drink tea with hookah.
Mm-hmm. This is a very Arabic meeting.
Yeah.
I'm here like giving you guys like lessons about Islam and stuff. Import from Dubai.
Oh, is this a philosophy meetup?
Yeah.
I have to say we're discussing the Quran.
Surprise.
So Paolo, what's up? What do you think about the subjects that we're discussing?
Should we re-establish the caliphate?
Oh yeah, do you have any thoughts on death?
Yeah, I think that I have the same issues with that. Like, I could be afraid of something, but I also think that it depends upon what you believe, and I don't know. I believe in words and the thoughts. So I think that if you always say all the sentences in perfect present, it's like you're doing this without time, without past or future. So I think it's already done, everything. Mm-hmm. So I'm already here, so it's like done. It's like just like a tiny loop in the time. So I don't know, I can die because I don't know. So, or I could die, but I'm not. You know, it's like you're not dying. Everyone thinks like you're dying right now because your life is like going this, because time is like this, or I don't know what shape of time do you believe you have. But you're not dying. You're just here. You're living. So it's hard for me to think about that because I always get this thought about I don't want to die in the street. I always say like I don't want to die in the street because no one knows me. So it's like I don't know why I feel that. Like if I die here, you know, I don't have any regrets or something. Like I wish I could I don't know, hug someone or you know. But it's something like to end in something that you don't like to. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like just so I don't know anything about reincarnation or anything, but I believe that everything's already done. But like Kant or something like that is you're just something here. You don't think your own thoughts. It's like you're not. I don't know. I have many philosophers that I like and everyone is like that. Yeah. But I think like Kant said something beautiful for me because I think that it's a nice way to see the world, and it's to be open to all these silence. Because if you're an artist, just paint or draw or sing or whatever, and the sign is gonna get through you. If you're I don't know what else, like a cooker or something, and just do the thing, and then everything's going through you. So it is like a Platon in this idea world and this shadow world, and we're in this something that I don't know what it is. I'm just like discovering the path, and I wish I could have a strong belief about God or death or life, but now I'm just thinking in words, because I think like our words are our thoughts, so it's like I don't know, it's interesting. So I think in time, because time and space is something in the languages, I don't know, in the language, in the words, in the way that you express, because we're like we always tell some stories, So that's the way that the human is. I don't know what's a human, like blood or meat or brain or, but I think it's more like words or stories. So yeah, I don't know, I think that I'm kind of afraid, but also I'm not, because it's just really funny.
So you're kind of focused mostly on the present moment? Like that's kind of the only thing to worry about?
It's not the, well, I don't know what's the present moment. It's like so tiny that it's like being in, like there in the past, present, and future. Because if you see the past, present, and future, it's like this, like a linear, just like. But if you see it like I don't know, like something, it's just being there in all this. It's not like and going through, because I always get fascinated about space and time and all this like equation and to being in two places and this probabilidad, and if you don't know anything, you don't even know where are you in this like exact place. You don't know anything about anything. It's all, well, it's not all probabilidad. It's not, but it's like just. I don't know how to explain it, but it's about this, it's like that it doesn't exist but exists.
Yeah, like if time is not linear, then does death exist? Almost. Like, because if we've already, if there's no beginning and end, right? Like if life has a beginning and end, which is linear, that's a linear system. But if it's not linear, and if there's no beginning and end, then death kind of has a different meaning.
That's actually a very good point. My brain is quite confused now.
But then that would actually go back to like pretty much everything. We're just all in complete agreement that like there is no free will, you know? Like it's just all written ahead of time,
Or it's already happened and already has happened and already will happen, and it's all.
That's something they talk about in the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, is Krishna is helping Arjuna. Like, has anyone read Bhagavad Gita?
Time ago.
I think you would like that.
Cool.
Yeah, essentially, it's like Krishna is this god. And he's helping Arjuna fight pretty much against like this warring tribe, but his warring tribe is built of like his friends and families and people he grew up with. And he's like, I can't kill them. Like they're my, like I know them, like I can't kill my neighbors. And he was just like, they're already dead. You're just gonna be the tool to do it. Like, and it has to be like that. Like there's no anything else. Like this is your job. Like you kill these people now because you have to, And it's like he's just the tool to do it, but like they're already done for. So it's kind of like then he just goes and massacres.
He's the guy who was really good with bow and arrow, Arjun.
I'm not sure.
I think he's the guy. He has a bow that basically spans across lands. Basically, one arrow can like take out pretty much armies. He's like super strong bow and arrow guy.
But yeah, it was kind of just like, it's all written. It's already all written, like all of this whole thing is already done. And that's kind of what he was telling Arjuna. He's like, this is all done already, but your job is to do it.
Yeah, but if you think this, like if you have this thought, it's kind of selfish. Well, not selfish, but the difference about believe in something like science or yoga or meditation or psychedelics and believe in something like religion is more like you have to go through all these paths, like knowing yourself and also be always open to know everyone else or to be helping. So if you think that everything's done, so that's kind of unfair for some people, because it's like being just like solo pensar en ti, just like being always
of yourself,
yeah.
being selfish.
And then
So wait,
The
you're
people
saying
like-
believing in religion is selfish? Is that what you're saying?
no, that's the difference. Believing in something that it's already done and it's like a I don't know, like something that it's like endless and you don't born and you don't die, or like think that you have yourself, it's something like it's part of something bigger, that it's kind of the religion, but it's also just thinking about yourself. So you're missing some people, and even if you're like acting in some way, like it's sometimes it feels like it's not the right. I don't know how to explain it.
Like I had an ex-girlfriend that I pretty much was a horrible person to, and then she blocked me, and then she ended up recently coming back, and she's like, actually, I learned so much, like, you know, like all that horrible shit you did, like it taught me like the best lessons. And I'm like, I'm such a good guy. Like, I was her messenger, you know, but it's like selfish because it's like I was just like cheating on her like relentlessly, you know, and I was like, you know, like, and then like I can kind of justify it after the fact, like it was her destiny.
I guess
Yeah.
that's what you mean, right?
Is that anything?
Like you can use it self-servingly to say, like a predetermined outcome was that you being a good person, like further down the line of time.
Yeah, I don't understand what you said.
So it's in
His
a
accent,
sense like.
is it his accent?
Yeah, it's like so fast.
Oh, sorry. So
Slow it down, Virgil.
basically, Jeff is saying he, cheated on his girlfriend, and he really hurt her. And then because she came back to him and said it was a good thing that he broke her heart because she actually had to learn,
Yeah.
that he is then saying, well, I'm a good person because, this thing that was supposed to happen anyway, I'm taking credit for it. Was that your point?
Well, that's no, because all these ideas about being a good person, it's beyond that. Like teaching a lesson to someone. It's more like a few steps in life to be a better human being. It's not like taking all the bad things and say like, okay, I can do it, or like, okay, this thing happened for a reason, so I can go through, because you're not feeling the things like right now. Like if you're mad, you can be mad, because I was thinking that I like Buddhism, and then their idea about suffering, it's like suffering is the worst thing that you can ever have. So I was saying like, yeah. So I said like, I don't want to suffer. Then I started, I'm not gonna suffer. Like I don't wanna miss anyone. I don't wanna have an attachment to anything. So it was easier, but it's not the right way, because I don't know. It's like I like Kant because they have a moral, like it's something like inside of you. It's like a one thing that you can, so you have to. It's not about help people, but it's like I don't
Which
know.
philosophy is this?
Kant.
Kant.
Kant?
Maybe, yeah.
K-A-N-T.
I've never heard of that.
No, he's pretty good.
Super.
Yeah, or Kierkegaard. It's like love, just love. But it's nice. It's a nice. I don't know. I'm not a religious person, but I want to be a religious person.
That's good.
Well, would you? I don't know if this is what you were even thinking of, but some of what you said made me think of almost just like existentialism. Because it's like, well, if everything is predetermined, then nothing matters, and it doesn't matter what I do, and it doesn't matter what I choose, because it's all been decided,
So then
and
people
I don't
fall
have
into
to
nihilism.
have. Yeah, like I don't have to have responsibility anymore because all of my choices have been made, and I'll just do whatever.
This existentialism is just a way to talk. It's not a really. It's just a movement. It's not like something real, but it's strong. It's something pretty strong, and it's like the free will of the humans and la libertad de las personas, and you don't realize that you're like controlled with some kind of pessimism or something like that. And all these series in Netflix and all these things are like reproducing way to see the world, and it's like kind of existentialista. But existentialism is it's not good. It's always like Sartre or all these guys. They say like being sad is something that you can choose. Being mad it's something that you can choose because you can choose whatever you want because you're free. You was born to be free. So all this freedom, it's exhausting and it's like, what I'm gonna do? Like, because you don't believe in anything. So you think that you're like overwhelmed of, you have to do everything, yeah. So it's like, it's up to you to be whoever you want to be, or like to be successful, or to be a loser, or to be whatever. It's up to you. So it's hard. It's like, everything's up to me. So you have to work every day. And this is why all these, I don't know if you know this guy, Yoon Chul Han. He's cool. And he was talking about, I don't know how to say it in English, but it's sujeto de rendimiento.
¿Sujeto de qué?
Rendimiento. It's like these people who works for
Rendimiento.
themselves. So you have to be like productive every time, and you have to be better, because you don't have a boss. It's yourself. You're like, you're saying all the things that you have to.
Performance is rendimiento.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Good. So yeah, it's like more. It's, I don't know. It's like it's not as good. But all this propaganda, it's saying like it's good to be like that, or it's good to. It's not good, but it's the way that it is. But it's not that.
We have
Which
fallen
part?
into that quite hard, actually.
Free will?
The like performance is like you got to be better, you know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the world that we live in. It's like you got to be better, so that because you're a loser if not, and then like people are virtue signaling how much better they are. Like they buy Louis V bags and shit like that. But then like it kind of got bastardized with capitalism. But yeah, it's like depending on what culture values, but yeah, like high performers are like at the top, and you can either do that by buying stuff and then you're like a high performer, or like you're someone of value because you have all this like valuable stuff, or in like Viking times you would be a high performer by like conquering a new land or something like that, and then you would be like known as this like adventurer, you know, and then that like raises you up in society type of thing.
Yeah.
Or I guess if you give everybody that propaganda, it kind of keeps society more stable because people kind of more or less share the same beliefs. Whereas if you have a more, like, well, radical, I'm saying radical, but it's not a radical belief, of, you know, you really have choice and all of this is just kind of a distraction. Like, you know, a Netflix philosophy, if you want to call it that. It kind of gives turmoil to society, so maybe that's why we're all kind of plug into the same ideals, and the more you kind of leave that, you get. But I don't know, it's very hard to get a society to actually do that, and like unplug from it.
Well, I think it's hard to get a disconnected society to like care about each other. But like historically, humans lived in really small communities. Think like cities, just the concept of a massive city. I feel like that changed things a lot because now you've got millions of people around you that you don't know and you might never talk to. And so it doesn't,
That's
it's
not
easy
my
not to
reality.
care.
I talk to everyone.
Well, yeah, you're one of the radical ones, right?
And then there's you.
But yeah, I really agree with that. I think cities have kind of maybe brought out the worst of humanity in a way, and that's, as you say, we were all in these small tribes and we all care about each other, and it's like, you know 150 people in your tribe and you know a little bit about them, what they like, what they don't like how you can help them or bring value to those people. Like you're thinking collectively as a community, we're all going to get behind this idea because it's good for the community. But then in a city, we don't know anybody, so we don't have this. So I do think it's quite possible now that people can work remotely. You don't have to work in an office in a city. I do think there's going to be this kind of weird situation that happens where people begin to move back to smaller communities again. Just because there's no need to be in one centralized place anymore. You can kind of spread out a little bit.
Having your own farmland with like a chicken coop and stuff.
Yeah, hence, so let me start selling you on my forest commune. But honestly, that's one of the reasons I want to build a community in a forest or something, like in harmony with nature, for this exact reason that you brought up. Of people, when they all share a common value, I think that's a pretty beautiful thing. And I think it brings out the best in people. But it's kind of weird, like you can live in a building and not even know your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have no idea who's living in your building. So it's very hard to have a community. And that's kind of got lost. And I mean now, like Jeff bringing this all together for philosophy or something, you get very interesting conversations. But that on a bigger scale, I think could be very positive for society.
But yeah, it's hard to make that into a city-sized scale,
Yeah.
you know? It's very difficult to do that on a big level. I actually think one of the things, and this might be a bit controversial, but mixing all these different cultures could be bad in the long run, because some people have these values, and then they're all, you know, in Canada it's Muslims, Jews, Asians, whites, everyone's just together, and no one really has that sense of community or that sense of identity. Everyone has a completely different
Set of
idea,
values,
you know, what does being a Canadian mean to me versus most other people could be completely different, because we don't have that culture anymore, you know. So that's why having these smaller communities where it's hey, this is what we're focused on, you know, we want to develop ourselves and read books and stuff like that and discuss ideas, and then other people would be we just want to be entertained and things like that, you know. And then you could have these separate things that don't really mix, but yeah, mixing could potentially be an issue.
Interestingly, these communities have kind of already exist, but within a bigger city, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
People kind of naturally collect into groups, and then it just so happens now that people will get very strongly on one side, I am X and you are Y, so we don't like each other now. And we're going to argue till the end of time about something because we have separate identities when we're really the same people at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of already happened, but it's just things get more complex in city. So as you say, going back to smaller communities, I think is a really, really good idea.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you said about the idea of performance, because we all focused on performance, or I guess you could call it capitalism, which is not actually a negative thing. I think it's already quite positive for humanity in a lot of ways. But this maybe excessive focus on it pushes all to live in a big city because of scale or whatever, and then that kind of throws us away from
even if you look now, a lot of people are leaving bigger cities. If you look at New York, Toronto,
Yeah.
people are just leaving because they don't believe in living in bigger cities anymore. They're why should I pay so much money to just stay and get the same amount of same type of experience that I could get in a smaller city?
Or in a different part of the world. It's look at Playa. So
True.
many people have moved here or come
True.
here because now they don't have to be in their big city. They don't have to be in their office. They can decide where they want to be and what's important to them. And no one wants to be stuck in, not no one, but I think more people are deciding they don't want to be in a concrete jungle, big city environment.
100%.
I guess the only big argument that I commonly see from people is just if you grow up in a city, all your family are there. That's kind of the biggest issue people have, is sort of moving out to these smaller towns or communities, in that they have to leave their whole family. So I think it's an issue that takes multiple generations to solve. Maybe millennials are kind of the first generation that kind of bring about that change, and then it goes in that direction over time. But I don't think it's a quick fix or something like that. I think it's a slow.
I think one of the ways to deal with that though could be just maybe every culture can be its own thing, but then just instill we need to be able to communicate with the other cultures without hatred, you know. So if you're left leaning politically, you hate right leaning politically, and right leaning hates left leaning, and they just insult each other, you know. And there's no room for dialogue, or it's kind of when I look at say Trudeau in Canada, it's I just think of him as an evil person. I don't even think of it maybe.
But did you like him when he first became prime minister?
I voted for him twice.
That's what they say, right? When you're young, if you're not a liberal, you don't have a heart, and if you're older and if you're not a conservative, you don't have a brain.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just a matter of you growing up.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I did want to vote against him in 2019, but I looked at the conservative thing. And then like it's like, what's their stance on this? And it's like the conservatives don't have an official stance on this. And like he at least like, even though I disagreed with some of the things, it's like at least he has a stance, you know? Like he's not just winging everything, you know? So then that's why I voted for him in 2019. But yeah, it's like now I look at him as like an evil person. I don't think there's any way of like justifying what he's thinking, but that's a fault of me for, you know, like letting him, number one, have an effect on me, and then number two, like I'm kind of falling into that tribalism, like I'm on this side now, you know, and there's no common ground. And like, yeah, I think if like all these communities, they can get together and just like openly communicate with each other, say, hey, we completely disagree on everything, but like realistically, we all want what's best for society. We just have different ways of getting about it. And so there's like, if we can instill that overarching belief that everyone is pretty much a good person, more or less, then it would like, then we could be separated and could like mix and mingle and everything like that without like hatred.
But you can, with that belief, you can't take out the fact that there's no bad people in the society.
But you can't really eliminate that either, you know? Like the best revenge for like bad people is just not be like those people.
You want to obviously want good for humanity and society, but like, and I like the notion here, but it's like you can't discount the fact that there's no bad people, you know what I mean? It's like with good comes bad, with up comes down, you know. There's an inside and then there's an outside. There's, you know, there's up, down, like there's no good without bad, there's no bad without good. It has to coexist. You know, it just can't be all good.
You have to find the balance. Like all these Eastern philosophies all talk about finding balance between two polar opposites or dualities. So it's like you got to find a middle ground somewhere. But then I don't know if you can really do community at scale. I don't know if humans are really programmed for it, at least in our current iteration, because like genetic mutations take a very long time to happen. So
I mean, if there's a bigger cost, I think you can. Like you definitely can build a community.
But where
if you want to look at it,
like aligned around a single goal or like ideal for that. Like let's say every Canadian is aligned around one single belief. I mean,
It's
theoretically
not
they
just
kind of
one
are.
single belief.
Or like, you know, a
It's
shared.
like that, yeah. Because that's the way. That's
what about?
why.
I mean, what would you consider like what Hitler did? Like he got people to do the same thing around his belief.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but
Hitler was also he was just a indicator of the way that the zeitgeist of society was like formulated. It's like zeitgeist is like the spirit of the times. So like, what do people think? And so like bringing it back to COVID, before like 1.5 years ago, saying that it came from a lab was like, you couldn't say that. If you said that you can get vaccinated and still get COVID, that's like completely like people would not allow that as a thought, you know? And then as the zeitgeist has now shifted, it's kind of going towards like, okay, like we now know that you can get vaccinated and have COVID, and like we
It came
pretty
from
much,
a lab.
yeah, it's pretty likely it came from a lab. So like that zeitgeist has shifted versus like when Hitler was there, the zeitgeist was like Jews are horrible people and like they're dirty, and he also used propaganda to propagate that idea as well. So like he like the propaganda shows like rats with like these Jewish noses, so that like people in their brain thought that Jewish people were like vermin, you know, and they were like dirty, so they would like get them away from me. Like I don't want this like diseased creature, you know, and like they didn't even think about.
But like I mean, with
doesn't
not
that kind of
using
highlight that it doesn't work at scale? Like that it constantly gets corrupted by different politics throughout history.
Yeah, and then also you cannot discount the fact that people also have their own personal reasons to do certain things. So while you may get them to do things, you know, collectively, but still like, because we're human beings, you know, at the bottom, like in the core, like there might be like some specific agenda that you can't even like tell, you know, like it's humanly. It's impossible for you to say like, okay, like let's all gather together for this philosophy class. You know, I'm just giving like a small example. But then again, people might have their own agenda, right? Like you can't discount that. And that could be possible with the community aspect as well, where...
Well, we've seen a lot of that happen as well. Like small communities turn into like some crazy cults.
Or the Jones Massacre.
Yeah, I'm not really advocating for that either.
Yeah. It could happen. It's just like it's so hard to control the human
I think
consciousness. It's like impossible.
I guess you can't control this when we're trying to line people around.
You can definitely enlighten
Shared
them
values.
for sure.
But yeah, like I think the attempting to control things that goes back to like dying, like controlling the fact that you could die. It's not the best use of your time, you know, because like you could sit there and like fucking just sit there worrying about it all the time, but it's like just let it go, you know, like.
Yeah, like
What
we
happens.
take the bicycle all the time, and like the way we ride, like we can get hit and die, like you know what I
I
mean?
think about that regularly.
It's like
I was thinking
so
about
what
that
now? We don't
today.
take a bicycle anymore, like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just kind of have to accept that eventually
Something's gonna get you.
it will
Yeah.
happen. Yeah, I think it's interesting, like your point of people trying to sort of fight against or control an inevitable outcome. For example, people will spend hours researching
should
like
change the head
perfect
too,
diet,
by the
or like, you know, I'm not going to eat
Yeah.
grapefruit because grapefruit
The
is gonna
flavor's done.
give cancer. But at the end of the day, you're going to die anyway,
Yeah.
and you just spend all this time on something that, like, it just stole your time from you because you tried to control this. But the outcome is going to happen regardless. So,
Yeah, but you can live longer.
well, can you?
Yeah, I think so. If you have a good diet and
It depends though. Like I read this book about Winston Churchill, and he just like smoked and drank all the time. And everyone's like, when are you gonna like stop smoking and drinking? He's like, I know a lot of healthy people, and they're all dead. You know, like a lot of them are dead.
Yeah.
And then he just like outlived all these people who like were taking care of themselves and shit. And it's just like,
Although stories like that, where, you know, people
That's
say,
one-
my
one in
grandma
1,000.
smoked till she was 95, but I mean, she's a unicorn. Like,
Yeah, that's
for
like-
every
I agree
grandma who
with that.
smoked till 95, there's like
Yeah.
a million that died at like 75 from smoking every day. So,
Yeah.
Well, so there's like the blue zones, like there's
Yeah.
like of parts of the world where people tend to live longer, and so there's all these people like from different disciplines like nutrition or whatever who try to study blue zones. I think it's blue zones, right?
Maybe just open-
yeah, what was the name of that guy? Something Price, was this?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know anyone's name, but it's interesting to see like, oh, they do have things in common. Like they maybe eat certain ways that might be in common, or they're closer to nature in some ways, or they're less stressed, or I don't know. There's less crime or something like. It's I don't know all of the factors.
one of the factors was that they all have like strong social connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like one of the main things. But this Balaji dude who's like a crypto guy, he was saying, he was on Tim Ferriss' podcast, and it was a very interesting episode. But he was saying like, there's an interesting thing because like humans do have a set lifespan, like it spans within like maybe 2-3 decades or whatever. But you don't see anyone who just kind of stays inside and or like has like the perfect amount of social thing, and then they just live till like 300 or 400. You know, it's like it is all contained into like a very specific amount of time, like between like 70 to 110 usually. You know, so it's like.
Also,
you
I
can't
feel-
really like extend it too much, you know. Like,
Going back to this, like now that I'm here in Mexico, it kind of reminds me of the time when I was in India, and the time that I lived in Canada. It's so different because I feel like in the Western world, at least, people are so isolated from each other,
Yeah.
you know. But like in India, everybody was in your business, you know. Like even if you didn't want them to be, you know, like. My friends would not even call me before showing up to my house, and that would just be like a normal thing, you know. And you know, it was just like, yeah, all right, what's up? Like, yo, you got some dinner, or let's eat it together, whatever, you know. But that would never happen in the Western world. So like now I'm thinking like now we have a good like community and culture here, but I'm just thinking like, you know, just like this whole social aspect of like, you know, being with people and like having these conversations and stuff like that, and people actually like giving a fuck about you and like caring about you, that does so much for your well-being, as opposed to where you're like kind of isolated, and even if you have to meet a friend, you have to make plans a week before because they might be busy and they have things going on in their life. That's the whole thing of the West, but that doesn't happen in, you know, countries like Mexico and in India. Like I've never seen that happen. It's like, oh, you're out today? All right, let's meet at 6 p.m. There's no planning. It's pretty much like, all right, let's do it. You know what I mean? But whereas in Canada, it would be like, oh, you know, I'm busy, but like, let's try next week again and stuff like that. There's so much isolation and distancing between people and I don't think that's a good thing, honestly. It's like
There's a trade-off for it, right? Because like,
yeah, there's definitely a trade-off. It's the same thing in the U.S. too, because I spent a fair bit of time over there. But yeah, I noticed that like in the Western world, it's quite different than how it is in the other countries.
I think we talk about with India, I think that does exist in these small towns as well. Like for example, even in small towns in Ireland, everybody knows everything about everybody else, and there is more of a community vibe because there's only like a few hundred people in some of these smaller towns. So they all kind of know, and they do have a community. They all go to like the community center or something,
Yeah.
and hang out together. So you do get it, but yeah, I think
But also, if you look at it like in India, now that I recall, it's like people don't have a lot of money, but still they're happy as fuck.
mm-hmm.
You know, they don't care about not having like $1 million in their bank account. They just like sit outside, like, you know, on the fucking stairs, like right, like on the street, and they just talk about like stupid shit, and they're fine. You know, they don't care. Like it's just like how they live, and you know they're completely fine. And then when you start having like more money and, you know, more business and more like whatever things going for you, you're like, fuck, I'm terrified. I have anxiety, I have stress, you know, like things start happening to people.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
I think it's because in the West, like the very premise of all advertising is you are not enough, but if you had this product, you would be enough.
Yeah,
And you're
for
constantly
sure.
sold this all the time.
100%.
But then in other poor countries, they just don't have the money to buy these like luxury goods or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're not indoctrinated in the same way. And also when you're less economically prosperous, you don't have the same. You kind of need a support group to
Yeah, you
kind of
can't,
help
like,
you
insulate
like
yourself.
raise kids or whatever, or like you know you look up for each other. Maybe you know if
100%.
something happens, you're a plumber, you come and fix my sink, and then another day my wife makes you bread or something like that.
I think it is cultural too, though, because I think about, like, for example, my family here in Mexico versus in the U.S. Like, it's not even economic here, but for my family, it's like they're just closer and more connected because it's cultural. Like, there's family dinner and family Saturday lunch, and people show up at each other's houses, and we have a group chat that is like active all day, every day. And you know, and it's not, and so I guess that's just an example where it's not necessarily for economic reasons. It is just cultural. It's just how you do life. It's how sort of it's ingrained. Whereas in the U.S., it's exactly like you said. People are so disconnected. And it's so easy to just isolate yourself.
Why do you think
No, but
that
also
is?
I
Why do
agree
you
with what Fergal said about the advertising with products and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
this basically with an agenda, right? Like you have to get this in your life. Your life is not complete, but you don't see that over here. It's just like even if people like don't have a lot, they're just completely okay with it, you know. It's like for example, like a couple of years ago, I was looking at this like dream car that I wanted to buy, right? Like I wanna get an R8 at some point of time. But now, like, I fucking think about it, I'm like, riding bicycles is way better than having a fucking R8. Like, what am I gonna do with this R8? You know, if I buy that in Canada, I'm only gonna be able to drive it like 6 months out of the year. So it's probably gonna be a summer fucking car. And what's the fucking point of me buying a car that I'm only gonna drive like 6 months out of the year?
Anybody have more fun just like weaving in and out of traffic on a BC bike?
Yeah, I'm like, fuck, this is so awesome. Like, I have my BC Playa, like $20 a year. Like, I'm fucking living life.
Honestly, I was cycling home from dinner the other night, and our BC Playa was like the most fun I've had in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Where were we?
And even the
back to
fucking
the rounding place?
seats were wet on the bike, and I'm like, you know, pedaling on the bike with like standing. And although it's like more difficult, I'm like, fuck, this is the best ride of my life. It's so fucking hilarious. Oh man.
But yeah, well, why do you think it exists, the difference between like say Mexico and the US? Like,
You think? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
Like-
I think it's all part of what you said. I think also it's just because people have a lot of spare time in like less economically stable countries. Like let's say, I mean, your case might be different because you know your family, like maybe they live here but they have like jobs and they get paid in US dollar. So the economic term might be different. But for most people, I would imagine would be, you know, they don't make a lot of money. They have a lot of spare time in their hand, you know, which means that they have to be actively involved and have people around them, as opposed to, you know, US where you don't necessarily have to do that. You know, it's a complete opposite.
But it's kind of a weird thing though, like if I have spare time, I usually think of like what I can build or what there's some cool things that I can make in that spare time. Like I hang out with people still, but then a lot of my time like it's thinking like, all right.
But kids over there, they're not taught the same way as you're taught, Jeff. So kids
That's
over
like
there.
a Western maybe ideal more so.
Yeah, so kids over there are just taught, okay, you know, your education's the most important thing. Like school is like fucking big, right? Like college and education. In the West, if you don't go to school or college, you're still gonna be okay, pretty much, right? But in a country like India, which is very similar to Mexico, by the way, and you know, like as soon as I got out of the airport where like fucking drivers are all in my face, I was like, fuck, am I in India? So, you know, it's the same like hustle mentality, right, at the end of the day. But it's like you're taught like, oh, if you don't go to school, if you don't go to college, you're gonna fucking die. But it's not the thing in US, Canada, UK. You're not taught that. You're still gonna be okay, you know. So it's like the indoctrination is completely different for kids like growing up in Western countries versus growing up in, you know, much poorer countries, I would say.
I would say in the West is still like a lot of pressure to succeed by societal standards, whatever, you know, that means like you have some kind of status in society that's kind of drilled into you at a very young age. Like you have to be someone in society, which when you kind of look at it objectively, like, do you, like, can you just be content with just, you know, spending time with your friends and family? Like, do you need to be someone by societal terms? Like, not really.
Yeah.
And then it's like you find your hobby, you're like, okay, now like I have a job or like whatever, I'm like successful, but now I need to have a hobby as well. So you're like, even just trying to find your pastime, it's like I can't do like knitting because knitting is not like
it's not a cool
thing. So like I gotta go like rock climbing or something, you know, like whatever. Like you have to kind of like everything is built towards like I need to be like a individual who's like special or like fits in or whatever it is.
Or people say, so how are you making money from your hobby? Like, you just have a hobby, like, enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, so like the reason I actually started this is pretty much,
if you said that to me like at least like 8 years ago, like you could make money from your hobby, I'd be like, fuck you, Fergal. Like fuck off, like don't even talk to me. You know, but like I see like all these like YouTubers and stuff like that, they're basically playing video games and making a living, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like this was like, you know, I was never taught this, you know, like I was taught to be a fucking engineer or a doctor growing up, and that was the end of it. If you don't like do that, you're fucking dead. You're dead to the family. You basically, you know, we disown you, like don't even like use our fucking name and stuff like that. Like that was my reality. Like usually
A little over extreme.
There's this YouTuber named Captain Sinbad. He's from an Indian family as well, and he's like he just started blowing up on YouTube, and then like he was a consultant at some like Salesforce or something like that, and he had a good job. But then his parents were like disappointed in him because he wasn't a doctor because he's Indian. And they're like he does these interviews with his mom and dad, and they're like, so like how do you feel about like me? And they're like, you know, they're just upset. I mean, he's like I make more than like $20,000 a month from YouTube now. So he quit his consulting job, and it took him a while before like he was like, all right, now like without a doubt, I need to quit this. And then like his parents were so disappointed that he quit to go become a YouTuber, and it's like, bro, like I'm making like more than a doctor.
And going back to like what you just said, like I studied engineering, and honestly, I don't give a fuck about it. That was not even something that I wanted to study. I just like fucking went into it because my parents indoctrinated from a young age that you have to be a fucking engineer, and that's the only reason I went into engineering school was because of my parents telling me over and over.
Did you graduate?
Of course I did.
And like imagine how many other beliefs we all hold right now that are dictated by society that we're not even aware of. Mm-hmm. We're like doing it not for ourselves but for someone else.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a sad thing to think about because you're not even really living your own life at a certain point.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so cool to study or to like even just experience other cultures, because sometimes you don't even realize that a behavior you have is cultural until you realize someone does it differently. Because that's their culture.
Like showing up on time?
Like showing up on time. Or,
that was a shock for me when I first arrived to Mexico. I'd like meet someone on Tinder and I'd be like, all right, like 3 p.m. You know, I'd be like there at like 2:55. And I'm like waiting for 45 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
Or the opposite, where someone shows up exactly at 8:30 and you're like, what? Like I remember when I first moved to Italy, I threw a party. Like everybody on the study abroad Erasmus program showed up, and at exactly 8:30 when the party was supposed to start, all the Germans, like Swiss and Austrians, were just at the door. And I was like, guys, like I'm not expecting you till like 9 p.m. What is this?
Yeah, I had this one friend of mine like who used to go like on these Tinder dates, and I mean he did it kind of differently where he would just like message the girl 30 minutes before, and then he would pick a weird time like, hey, can we make it 8:09? Just to kind of confirm if the girl would show up or not. She's like 8:09. Okay, well I guess 8:09 then.
And then she's still 30 minutes late.
This Pete dude that I met at jiu-jitsu as well, he like we invited him over for dinner the one time. He's like, all right, like I'll bring my own meat, and we're like, what? No.
Like we're
Obviously not. Like, what the fuck? And then like he's like, all right, what can I bring? Like, you want wine? You want? I was like, bro, like just show up, bro. Like, what are you talking about? But it's like. It's
that's
very,
the culture though, right?
yeah, it's very, very Polish too. Like you have to, you can't just freeload or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there, he's like, yeah, like next time we'll do it at my house. I'll buy the meats, you know. And it's
the
like,
biggest culture shock for me was like when you went to like fucking birthday parties in Canada, because like for the longest time of my life, I was used to like the guy or the girl whose birthday it is, they're paying for everybody's dinner, right? But then when I started going to these birthday dinners, I was like, oh, I have to pay for myself? Okay, well, that's not a problem. But this is not something that I would have done, back home in India. Like this was not a thing.
mm-hmm.
So that was kind of like surprising to me. I was like, all right.
Yeah, it's like so many small things that you would never think of until you're like in a different culture or country and you're like, oh, that's just the thing I do.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing about like these unconscious beliefs that I was thinking about is like, so I didn't go to university and I didn't really fit into like this mold of society of like you go to school, you get a job, you like climb the corporate ladder. But then like a part of me was like, I'm gonna drop out of university, start a business, get rich, and then I'll like, it's kind of like a different way of fitting into society because you're like, look, I did it without following the rules, but like you're still part of that.
Like you resisting the rules
The
is
framework.
Yeah, it's you like falling into the rules, and it's like unconscious. I'm like, fuck, like I didn't get out of it. You know? Like I thought I got out of it, but I'm just like as deep in the matrix as like I could possibly be. You know, like. Like
Yeah.
you're like sitting like, oh, look at these non-free thinkers.
I mean, even like a big cultural difference is like, there's usually some person in, your friends group that has the most money, right? So at least in the Western world, it's like if you like try to get somebody to pay for you, it's kind of like that's weird. But then back in India, you would actively think of ways on how you can basically cut the goat or get this person to pay for your dinner. And that was just like a normal thing. It's like, okay, well, what are you gonna say? Oh, today your girlfriend texted you something nice, Jeff. So maybe you should pay for our dinner, It's just like, oh, all right. But like you wouldn't do that in Canada, Like it's like kind of weird. Like, hey, Jeff, can you pay for me? Like,
Yeah.
your girlfriend texted you today. So be like, fuck off, dude. Like, pay for your own meal,
So basically our new culture is that Jeff always pays for dinner.
Well, I bought a bunch of fruits today. So.
Well, yeah.
That's true, yeah.
We cut the goat basically.
And made us tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this will be the only time that happens.
Jeff's like, hold up.
Yeah, Fergal had a thing like his.
I don't know if you could tell this story.
I had an employee and she.
Now we need the story.
Just don't put that on a podcast for that's too much.
Oh yeah, I guess I forgot that we were recording it. But yeah, like no one listens to them anyway. So, but like, she quit anyway, so she won't be editing it. But like, I can't even tell it. Like fucking pretty much she.
Don't tell
She would like. she would take random days off work, and she's like, "Hey Jeff, can I take like this day off work?" I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not a fucking like dictator. Like, take off as many days as you want. Like, I don't care. Then Virgil the one day was talking about it like from her boyfriend's perspective. It's like, yeah, why don't you just stay home? We can fuck all day, and Jeff can pay for it.
And the look on Jeff's face, he was so pissed.
Yeah.
Like, you could see him like putting the pieces together, and he's like, "Oh no."
Yeah, I was like, I've been paying for this the whole time.
What have I done?
I said it not quite as elegantly as that, but that was the general gist of it.
I don't know why I even brought that up just now, but I don't know what we were talking about before that.
About killing the goat or whatever he said. Yeah, so death.
It's getting back
So
to
death.
Trying to wrap that up a little bit.
Circle back to death.
Circling back to death.
Jeff, how does death help your anxiety? Tell us again.
Well, pretty much. If we think about it from the perspective of like evil things happen, like we were talking about, like there has to be good and evil in the world, you know, good and bad. If like death could be construed as a bad thing, it kind of is. It helps keep everything in balance.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like you dying, it's like, you know, like it's, you know, it has to happen for the good of like the beehive, you know, like the bee gotta go. And there's actually this thing in that Epictetus book that he said, where he mentions sort of like if you can have, like you try to get glory in battle, but then like if you can't achieve it, at least you get like cut down and someone else can achieve it. So it's like you shouldn't deny someone else their glory just because you weren't good enough to get it. So it's kind of selfless, you know.
Can you repeat what you just said?
It's sort of like people want to go into battle and like get glory and like have this glorious victory against their enemies. Mm-hmm. But it's like if you can't do that, at least you can get killed by someone else, and then they can have the glory. Right. And you just weren't good enough, but then it's like it's their glory to have. Yeah. So it's kind of like objectively or subjectively.
It's like sacrificing the goat.
Yeah, I guess so. A lot of goat talk. Lots of goats. But yeah, it's sort of like if you were to die, it's not necessarily a bad thing, you know, whether it's for like the good of many people or if like you're just helping that one dude who was your enemy, like, but if you guys are all one, then it's not really a bad thing in the grand, like if you take
Because nature is balancing everything.
Nature's balancing it out.
Yeah, I remember reading about this before in, I think it was Ray Dalio talked about it in his book where he goes on safari and he sees a lion just like rip apart a gazelle. And everyone's like, oh my god, like the gazelle, like it's terrible. And he initially had this response of like, oh, this is terrible, the poor gazelle. But then the more he thought about it, the more he was like, that's nature balancing itself and doing its job. Like everything has a role and it's just balancing everything out. I feel that's kind of similar to what you just said.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, yeah.
There's a story of that guy too, like whose son breaks his leg or whatever.
Yeah. Do you know that story?
Wait, what is this?
It's like, so say there's like this dude, he owns a farm, he's a farmer, and then like one day his horse gets out and runs away, and all of his neighbors come over and they're like, oh, that's so bad, and he's like, yeah, we'll see. And then the next day his horse comes back, but it brings like a dozen horses with him. And they're like, oh fuck, like that's sick, like all of these horses, you just got all these free horses. He's like, we'll see.
Well, he says good or bad, who knows?
Yeah. But then like his son is like trying to tame the one horse, and he gets thrown off and breaks his arm, and everyone's like, oh, that's horrible. But then the next day like a war breaks out, and they like go to like conscript all the kids in the village, and then they're like, oh, you have a broken arm, you can't fight the war. So it's like, oh, it's good. And it's just like pretty much like in the grand scheme of things, you don't know what's good or bad. It just like everything kind of is, and like if you just try to label it, like me dying is it good or bad? Like subjectively for me, it could be not the best, but like if you look at everything from the perspective of like everything's kind of connected, and we're all kind of one thing, and sort of is what it is.
Mic drop.
And that's that.
And now for our sponsors. Do you want to listen to a book? Sign up to audible.com. 7,000 books. How many books are in the library? More than 7,000.
Register now. Be
Yeah.
part of Fergal's commune.
Yeah.
/cult.
Audible.com/Fergal's commune for 10% off your first purchase. And for today only, the first 100 people that sign up will get an Action Takers discount, where you will get an additional 10% off. If you're an action taker, if you want to get knowledge and grow as a person, click the link below.
Subscribe to our channel.
Click the link below, enter your email. We're going to send you a special bonus as well. First 100 people. Now back to the show.
And that's that. That's the show. What time is it?
It's the right time. It's the night time.
4.
Okay, not bad.
This is very sugary, I have to say. This honey tea.
Sugary?
Like the end is just pure honey. I put a lot.
As it goes.
And I've got honey all over my hands and my body. Look. So yeah, I feel like we didn't really talk much about that at all.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's sort of the game plan. Like it's a nice.
Well, we kind of did talk a bit about that.
I guess all these things kind of lead to a single.
Yeah,
It's
sort
the
of.
idea of universal truths that kind of permeate everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we can go over many different topics, but at the end of the day, they're all going to boil down to a few universal truths. And that's why I think it's important to master a single thing. For example, for me, I'm very focused on yoga at the moment, and just deepening that practice, because like all the secrets of the universe, or all these universal truths are within whatever your practice is, whatever you dedicate your
Within
time
yoga?
to. Yeah, it could be anything. It could be painting, or like whatever you dedicate your time to, you'll begin to see nuances, and you'll be like, oh, this is true in this situation, and you'll find that truth is true for everything else in your life. Like it's not just in one discipline. So if you become a black belt in jiu-jitsu, for example, you will get a lot of these universal truths as well, and they apply to anything else.
Anything
in the
else,
future.
yeah. It's like any sport, right? Like they say, like for example, with fitness in general, it's like if you train your body to be able to do difficult things, then indirectly you're training your mind to be able to do difficult things. So it's like these people that are like super like big bodybuilders and shit like that. Like they're all pretty successful.
But like the bodybuilders, like the byproducts, like they train their mind. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cliff note, it's Carl Jung, collective unconsciousness. I was mixing Power of Myth, Joseph Campbell, and Carl Jung.
Okay.
Very similar, but
Joseph Campbell's like.
footnote for everyone.
Joseph Campbell's like the hero's journey guy.
Yeah, he did Power of Myth, which talks about some of Jung's collective, like explaining why mythology is the same, but it's Jungian philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I wish psychedelics were more popular when Jung was around, because his whole concepts were based around interpreting dreams. So that's how we would get to the subconscious. But because you can't really get people out of the way in their subconscious. But then psychedelics kind of perfectly did that. So I feel if they'd been more available and like more used at the time, I feel like he could have had some very interesting concepts come from those.
I mean, yeah, I feel like everyone would probably be more interesting if they took psychedelics.
I don't know though. Like, you ever have a friend that takes psychedelics and it's a really bad experience? And you're like, oof, like it's maybe wasn't the right decision for them.
Yeah, it's happened like with one of my friends. This was like a long time ago, at least 10 years ago, and we were doing LSD plus MDMA. So it's basically called candy flipping.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it before.
So what you do is like you take LSD first, and then like after an hour or 2 hours, once it kicks in, then you just, and MDMA is basically pure form of ecstasy. So you just like either, and it's so bitter, like you can't really like take it like that. So you have to like put it in water, mix it, and then just sip on it basically. So it's like bitter water pretty much. So this guy like had a bad trip, and then he started fighting with everybody. So we had to like take him away and like just like take him somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And it also has to do I I think for most people it has to do with music, because like those drugs tie into music, and then like let's say everybody like likes rock music, and then there's just one guy who doesn't like rock music, and he's gonna be like, fuck, this sound is making me like feel weird or some type of way, like I can't be here, you know, and then he just like it just aggravates him, and he just doesn't want to be there.
So after this trip, was this guy just never the same? Like he lost his mind or what?
He wasn't like the same. He definitely didn't want to hang out with us. I guess that made him realize that.
You were a bad influence. Yeah, he woke up and realized he didn't want to be
Fuck,
friends.
I don't want to be friends with these guys. But it's okay. I mean, you know, you can't control that.
I do notice that like the music I listen to in my normal day-to-day life is very different than the music that I want to listen to if I were to be on a psychedelic, you know, like, and that John Hopkins actually has a playlist on Spotify, and they built like a mushroom playlist, and most of it's just classical music, you know, and it's just because when you're taking psychedelics, that's what you want. Like there's some weird connection with classical music and like good feelings, you know, or like, yeah, it doesn't freak you out.
Yeah, but it's also like the frequency of the music too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like lower hertz and higher hertz, and like if you listen to music at lower hertz, it's like kind of like amplifies your trip or something like that. I don't know how true that is, but if you see like in most of these raves too, like they're playing music at a different frequency, and then you tune into that frequency, and makes your trip much better, I guess, or something.
They also have like those. If you take ecstasy or MDMA at these festivals, they just have music. They don't even play the whole song. They like switch to a new song every couple minutes, and they never have like any break for you to actually like gather your thoughts. Like everything just like an overwhelming force put on you, so that you like can't think pretty much.
Yeah, I think as well in the playlist you talked about, they have a lot of music that takes you through different ranges of emotion. Because if you just have like a constant, steady like beat or something, you kind of stay in the same place. Whereas in this playlist, they've manufactured it so you get like very high and low. You kind of go through different waves. You oscillate through them, and then you get a much richer experience, much deeper experience. Mm-hmm. And then I think the reason it's classical is because, at least for me, it's like the cello and the violin is like they really vibrate, and you really kind of feel that in your body. Maybe that's why they chose classical music. I'm not sure, but would recommend, even without psychedelics, just like hang out like that with your brothers. It'd be nice.
I tried working on it, on the John Hopkins playlist, and I was like, this is too distracting. Like even though it's just like people hitting, it's like string instruments and everything. I was like, yeah, no, this isn't. You need a very specific type of work music.
I mean, probably not the best for productivity, but if you're just trying to relax, like yeah. Like I listened to that playlist doing weed yoga, and it was amazing.
So how do you disconnect from like this thought process of always trying to be better and just like acceptance, I guess?
I guess, at least for me, I'll speak from my experience, because I think a lot of people get into the idea of self-improvement. They're constantly trying to be better, but the very premise of self-improvement, or what people call self-help, I don't even like the word, is I'm not enough, but I will be in the future. Mm-hmm. And now as soon as you say I'm not enough, but I will be in the future, you're never enough, because you're always chasing something.
Yeah.
Kind of like an addict, you're chasing something in the future. Mm-hmm. You've given away your happiness. So I think the first book that kind of put me onto this idea was, it's called The 5 Pillars of Self-Esteem, where as soon as you
Daniel Bryan?
Possibly, I'm not sure, but it's basically as soon as you doubt that you are enough, the like quest to be enough goes on to infinity or something along those lines.
That's one of my favorite quotes. If my aim is to prove that I am enough, then like the mission has already failed, because like it failed the second I thought that was like I already wasn't enough. I butchered it as well.
I mean, you said it a little bit more succinctly than I did, but
both butchered
it's a great quote. And then the other thing was just the idea from actually Mark Manson, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but he kind of put me onto the idea of people get addicted to self-improvement, and they're not just like, okay, I'm good now. And then people do that further with happiness. You know, I will be happy if I become an engineer, or
Yeah.
you have like an Audi R8 or something like that, or like a Gucci bag or whatever people like, and it's
Or
just
it could be
constantly,
with business too. Like if my business makes a certain amount of money, then I'll be more happy. And
because in a way a dream is saying I won't be happy until I achieve this thing in the future. So you kind of made a trade yourself, like I'm gonna not be happy, then I get it. But then any of
get
us
it,
who have
and then-
achieved a goal,
Yeah.
it's completely fleeting. Like you work many years towards a goal. Okay, great. Now I made X amount of money, or like, got this thing, and it's for a week you're happy, and then you're back to baseline again. So it's kind of
it ties into everything though. Everything too, because like it's like a lot of people that are like, I guess, overweight, and then they're like, I want to like lose weight, and then they lose all this weight and get to a certain body fat, and they're like, fuck, I feel terrible now. Like,
and then they swing back because they did it for the wrong reasons.
yeah.
Like I used to go to the gym because I thought I would attract more girls, and then I was like, wow, this was so dumb, and I actually hate going to the gym. So I just stopped going, because if you do something for the wrong reason, that's not a very good way to live your life. I always say this, and Jess knew it was coming. If your first assumption is wrong, each additional assumption will be wrong. So if you assume that X will make you happy, you'll keep chasing more and more things, because your original assumption was something external will make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, nothing external will ever make you happy, and you just need to be content with who you are.
True.
Yeah, and people get like really attached to the outcome. Like the goal is the whole point, or the goal is the thing that's gonna make them happy, like achieving the thing in the end. But I went through this in my business, and I had the same experience. It would be like I'd set this big goal, and then I'd reach it, and then I'd be like, eh. But I got really into it. I was like, why? Like, why am I experiencing this? Like, let me, research this. And there's actually like studies about dopamine in your brain and the cycle. And we get more dopamine when we're working towards a goal. And then your dopamine actually drops when you hit it.
Yeah.
So it literally is chemical. Like we're getting a rush from like working on something, and then when we get to the end, we kind of don't feel great anymore.
Yeah, I remember I was going to therapy, and my therapist was like, you chase your goals like an addict.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's actually very accurate and on point. Because I was every few years I'd say, okay, I have my entire life figured out. When I achieve this, like I'll be happy, or this is how the world is. And then, I would achieve that and realize I was not happy. Or I was so certain about how the world was, and then something challenged that belief.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, my certainty is very fragile and got destroyed. And I have these crazy quarter life crises where I'd have to go back
So how
and
do
rethink my whole life.
you draw out the balance? Because like I experienced the same thing that you were talking about, which was like, oh, if I make a certain amount of money, I'll be happy. And then, I chased that like really hard, and then I hit that, and then I was like, fuck.
Well, have you ever sat and calculated how much money do you need?
It was like the 10 Ferris.
Never.
Like 4-hour work week principle. How
I
much
actually
you really-
never, it was just like more, I just swung.
And that's the problem. So like I actually, with our boy Brandon, we had this conversation, and it was talking about it's so loud, Brandon.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
What are you shaking, bro?
But like if you you can make a certain amount of money, but then like the quest that we're on for more money, that comes at a cost as well. So there's a cost to everything, and it's like, are you willing to pay that cost? And it's like, if you think more money is what you need, so you make like $20,000 a month, and then you're like, well, no, I need to get to like $40,000 a month, but then you have to put more time into this thing that's not your purpose. It's kind of pointless, versus like, if you're Steve Jobs and you become a billionaire, he became a billionaire because he was on his purpose. He was doing what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And
He
that's
wasn't there to
fine.
make money. That's
Exactly. So it's like I pretty much walked away from my business for the last year. Like I've been like retired, and then trying something else. But I was trying this other thing to make money with it, So I was trying to help people with anxiety as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
But then like the reason I put together this like philosophy meetup was because I realized like, wait, I don't want to make money. Like it doesn't have to make money.
Yeah.
Like it can just be a thing where you can just go have a conversation, and you don't have to like have someone who's like, I have these problems, blah blah, and you're like, yeah, I can fix that if you have $2,500.
That's interesting you say that, because like when I was like working with all these clients and stuff, right? I was like, okay, like let me get more clients and stuff like that. But then it came to a point where I realized I don't give a fuck about their business. I'm like, I don't care. Like if you sell like jewelry or like clothing or like furniture, like I don't give a fuck. You know, like I don't give a fuck.
And then to get more money, to do that, you're like, okay, now I have to like do more of this thing that I don't give a fuck about.
Yeah, it's like,
and it's kind of like you're just wasting your life.
Yeah.
You know, and there's like a thing actually where like sort of society is telling women like don't have kids. You know, like here's the financial cost of having kids. Pretty much, it's like they cost $1 million, like $200,000. Like, do you want to do that? Like, you could like get so much further in your career. And it's like, but what if they just want it? Like, this is like some of the most satisfying, like one of the most like core things that we're on this planet to do is to like have kids. So like to think about it in monetary terms, like why can't we think of stuff in like joy terms? Like, yeah, maybe you won't become like the CEO of this company that you don't even fucking care about. Like,
But also your best times were not when you were trying to make money, you were just hanging out with people. Like the best things in life are free and like that's for real.
Yeah, all these like weird sayings, like it's the friends we made along the way, like the pleasure's in the journey, not the destination.
But it's
all so you're like, oh sure, buddy, like let me just
let me just do this weird SEO thing or internet marketing thing.
Yeah, it's like more money you make, the more stress it brings you. Also, I mean, they say like
More money, more problem.
That's true. Like it's like they say money solves all problem, but then like you get to this point where you have more money, and you're like, fuck.
What's super interesting on Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, you go through, you need like basic food and shelter and things, and then it gets into, you need a certain level of income or whatever the different levels are. But then the one after people get like financial security is actually something along transcendence. Yeah, like they want to have a feeling of like connection to something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't some version of social connection in the pyramid?
Yeah, I only read it recently and I was like, wow, it's actually a lot deeper than you would expect.
It's super interesting.
But I think in a lot of like even nomad or business groups, people are constantly this like toxic productivity where you just have to be like making more money or like maximizing your time. But the best times of your life when you weren't maximizing your time.
Yeah, 100%.
You were just enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
But we're all still this idea that like external things or something else will make you happy when you can just choose to be happy right now.
Yeah. There's also that song called Cats in the Cradle or Cat's Cradle or whatever, where that guy's like raising his kids and his kids want to play with him. And he's like, I gotta catch a flight, I have to go work and shit like that. And then as he gets older and he's made it, he like tries to hang out with his kids, but they're like, they have jobs and all this stuff, and they don't have time for him anymore. And he's like, he lost all that opportunity of like what actually brings him joy in the pursuit of some random first assumption. It's like, no, like you need to be a success, but it's like, well,
also one thing I spent time doing is looking at what all like many people say in their deathbeds. And a lot of people are like, I wish I spent more time with my kids, my wife, whoever it is. Like, I wish I didn't work so hard. And they're the same things. Like, they're very simple things. And oftentimes the answer to a lot of things is the most simple solution. We want it so badly to be complicated that we're like, no, like it must be, like I gotta go and build a house with my bare hands or something and then I'll be happy. Like, it is, and there's a constant narrative from society of like, this is what you need. But you actually don't, and it is actually maybe that simple.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like you are enough, basically. You don't need anything.
I guess easier said than done, though.
and then also like tying it back in with the death topic, though, it's like eventually we're all gonna be forgotten, and like this entire life, like this entire earth is gonna become extinct. And so then, why wouldn't you just hang out with your family or hang out with your friends and just do all this fun shit? Because like, no matter how much you achieve, you're just gonna die anyway. So you may as well just do it like doing things that bring you true joy, So like, and I think being on your purpose counts as one of them. So like, it's not necessarily like only hanging out with your friends. And like, I had this kind of mental thing that I was playing with like my parents and like living away from home where I don't see my nephew, my niece, my brother, I don't see anyone. But I was like, but then they have to understand that if I'm there, I'm not on my purpose, so I can't be fully present to them. But then when I am there now, it's like I'm there, like I'm hanging out with them. So it's kind of like it's like a trade-off where you sort of have to be on your purpose so that you can bring the best of yourself to these other situations. But then you also still want to be like present to those situations. I don't know. It's like a complex thing.
I think you need to balance everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were talking about kind of nihilism on one side, and I guess maybe the other side is productivity. I don't know what the opposite of nihilism is exactly, but probably the truth is somewhere in the middle, like some balance of the two. If you're on one extreme, you're probably a little bit, you're pretty going in the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
And like all of these different philosophies, from Eastern philosophy, all talk about balance or like the middle way, the middle path, but no one really sort of reflects on that. And I was very guilty of doing that for a very long time in my life.
To psychedelics.
Yeah, basically.
Nobody also talks about this, right? Like you don't get this information from your parents or your peers. Like
Most people don't really know it even, you know? Like it's hard.
For me, that just came from getting wrecked. And I'd been depressed and then being like, oh, I was wrong about this. I gotta go back, like rethink everything. And then I rethink everything. I think I have the answer this time. Oh, a few years later, back to super depressed and wrecked again because my beliefs were working against me. Like if you're trying to fight against something, you're never going to be happy ultimately.
mic drop.
So our sponsors.
Okay, y'all, my boy. I'm gonna head out.
All right.
This is a very nice philosophy club.
Thank you for coming. We'll do it again next week. Or
Yeah, we're all the cool people who break the ring.
We're gonna do in 2 weeks. We're gonna do a simulation theory discussion. So
Already like it.
that one's not gonna be a practical philosophy. That's gonna be talking about how we are actually robots in a video game right now. Which we're all very excited about that one.
I haven't even, yeah. Okay.
In fact, I'm borderline convinced that we're
It is, in terms of probability, it is more like it.
We both watched that Elon Musk video.
Yeah, so the plan for that one is there's like a 20-minute video that Fergal and Donnie found, and we will watch that video, and then we will discuss that video, and that's the
Yoga tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
But tomorrow's
But in the nighttime, I'm gonna do the Ashtanga class.
Tanga? Is that Michael?
Yeah. You can try it if you want.
Yoga lab?
Yoga
¿Y
lab.
cómo
Yeah.
estás?
Yeah, you should come to yoga lab as well.
¿Sí?
Yeah, I haven't been there in a really long time.
almost up to be there.
Akram started coming, Neil started coming,
Sí,
Zoe comes as well.
You like it?
Yeah.
No,
I'm slowly indoctrinating everybody, that's basically.
See, I don't expect it, that's
Yeah, it was a nice one.
Very.
We're on Tinder, and everybody uses nice shared values and everything. Okay, well, thank you guys. That's it.
I will also nice to meet you.
I'm not.
I mean, this is happening now. Okay, you're like, no.
Oh wow, this computer is in a very dangerous position. Nice to meet you again. Okay, awesome.
Bye.
Now you got a banger of a podcast.
Yeah, we'll see. It's probably a mess. I don't even know if it was.
Yeah, I think I have so much money that I can't even have a cookie. I'll tell you about Dairy Queen on the way down.
Bye.
But
Bye.
I also recently had our
Turn this off?
what's that? The shisha?
No,
The mic? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I highly doubt any of the video got picked up, but I'm going to see.